we're joined by the brilliant Nicola Sainty, a registered nutritional therapist and the educational and training manager at Revive Active. Welcome to the House of Hormones podcast.
That's really key because ladies do feel lost. They don't know how they've kind of come to this stage there, maybe they've put on a bit more weight, they're not as mobile, they're feeling joint aches, they're not sleeping. I think a lot of GPs will say themselves, they don't get a lot of nutritional training. So actually, what advice are they able to give them apart from general advice?
How do you approach teaching healthy eating to younger women?
It's very, very difficult, Leah. Kids, let's face it, they don't want to listen. You talk more than 30 seconds and tell them something they're bored already and they've switched off. They've got such a short attention span, which is now even shorter due to social media. But it's good when they can overhear your conversations about nutrition, about healthy lifestyle and eating, because you're not telling them, so they don't feel like they're being lectured.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the House of Hormones podcast. This episode is sponsored by Revive Active. Nicola, hi. Thank you for joining us on the House of Hormones podcast today. I'm delighted to have you here.
Delighted to be here, Leah. Thank you for inviting me on.
So for anyone who doesn't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself. Can you share a little bit about your journey as a registered nutritional therapist and why women's health became your main focus?
Actually, I've not always been a nutritional therapist. I spent many, many years in a big corporate retail environment. And it was really, I think, spending so many years in that retail environment that I did get burnt out and became very unhealthy myself. And so I knew that things needed to change. I wasn't feeling great. I was feeling sluggish. And I really kind of had, I would say, two big wake-up calls, which led me into nutritional therapy properly. And the first one was I was really struggling to conceive. And so, I highly suspected that this was due to a high stress lifestyle, traveling hours, working erratic hours, eating from garages, just what I would call grab and go food. So just everything was kind of against us. And so I just started to slightly change eating habits, hydration, what I was doing, lifestyle. And I started to actually physically see and feel myself getting better. And then luckily, and feel very blessed that we did get caught pregnant. And so I knew that the power of kind of nutrition and lifestyle changes had actually changed this, potential trajectory for me. And so blessed today that I've obviously got a very, very healthy young daughter. So I'm pleased, obviously, about that. And so I'd kind of moved into it then, obviously, while still working. And then the second thing was, my dad got diagnosed completely out the blue with a grade 4 brain tumour, a glioblastoma, which is one of the most serious brain tumours, that you can be diagnosed with. And I think looking at that and then looking at the treatment and looking at kind of some of the advice that he had, I was just thinking, this can't be right. And it's almost you just get a few things clicking into place. And the NHS was wonderful and we got so much support, but some of the advice and then, watching some of the patients that was receiving treatment for various cancers, some of the food that was maybe coming around on the, on the trolley, I was thinking, oh my God, this isn't really healing food. And so I decided from then on to really take it very seriously and study it properly, which led me into that and out of that kind of that really, if you like, high impact career. And so I just decided, look, enough's enough. I've had 2 wake up calls now. This is it. And I studied it obviously properly as a naturopathic nutritional therapist, which is great because we'll look at everybody from all angles in terms of lifestyle, root cause, going back right to pre-birth. And it was just so insightful for my own journey and obviously for my family and friends as well, which was great. And from that, obviously, I went into clinical practice, which was fantastic. And then it led me into Revive Active as their education and training manager, which is where I am today. So, it's been a brilliant journey, transitional journey. And I think what you said about what led me into women's health is what's really strange, Leah, is that actually I went into practice with the intention of mainly treating men and having a men's clinical practice, because I just felt that men leave things. They don't talk a lot to other people. They are quite a closed book sometimes. Yeah. Or certainly was then. I know we're talking a lot more about men's health now. And so I thought I just want to provide a platform and opportunity for men to be able to come in. I did attract quite a lot of men coming into the practice, which was great. But naturally, because of that, I also attracted a lot of women because, and at my stage of life, where I was in life, and actually, it probably ended up being, in the end, I would say probably about a 70% women to a 30% men. So I still did get some men, but I'd much more transitioned into women's health. And so it was women coming, probably at my stage, which was that perimenopausal, now menopausal stage, where they felt burnt out, they felt emotionally drained. You know, maybe they'd lost the libido, it was causing problems in the relationship, they was fatigued, and they just had this myriad of symptoms that they was feeling, and they just needed to almost just have somebody that would listen to the full story and trying to help them then regain that health and overall vitality. And so that really led me to that passion for supporting, obviously, women's health and kind of going down that focus, really. And of course, I'm a huge women's health advocate.
It's really interesting, isn't it, actually, that you kind of went in to focus on men's health, thinking they don't often speak up for themselves, which we see, and they don't often go to the doctors. And then it kind of quite obviously ended up being more women coming, because women feel so lost, don't they? Like you've spoken quite a lot there and kind of alluded to the fact that it was mostly perimenopause or menopausal women. Women are just so lost at this stage of life, and the fact that your practice ended up filled with them is kind of an indication of that again. Like they're desperate for any type of advice and help, right?
The definite layer, and this is really where I think my passion lies, is because you use the word they're lost, and I think that's really key, because ladies do feel lost. They don't know how they've kind of come to this stage, and you know, they would often voice that, you know, how have I got here? You know, and they'd be looking at the full, like I've said, you know, the relationship, you know, maybe things aren't quite as good there, you know, maybe they've put on a bit more weight, they're not as mobile, they're feeling joint aches, they're not sleeping, they know that they've been feeling short, and maybe that bit short in temperature and that tolerance level, but they don't understand why. And so a huge thing for me in terms of helping that person heal themselves is just really, you know, listening. I think you've got to listen and take in the full story and gather the full problems, because sometimes when you're listening to people, they will almost tell you what the problems are, or they know what's at the root of those. And it's by listening and then tapping into that and just helping gently start to then, you know, turn the wheel with them. You know, you can find relationships improve. You know, people start sleeping better. People find a bit more enjoyment out of life, because sometimes as well in that menopausal transition, people can feel that loss of joy. And, you know, that's such, you know, it's such a tragedy really, because, you know, we've worked really, really hard. Maybe we've brought up family, maybe we're still bringing up our family. And now maybe we're caring as well for perhaps elderly parents. So we're kind of at that two ends of the support spectrum. So we often neglect ourselves, and then we feel wrung out almost like a rag. And just to help ladies find sort of like that little bit of rebalance, that little bit of vitality, that bit of joy again, and that we don't have to do everything.
Yeah.
You know, and just that bit of guidance, it you know, it's life-changing for people.
When women go maybe into the doctors and they might be talking about some of the symptoms that you've just spoken about, I mean, the reality is that when it comes to nutrition, the kind of most that a GP would say is, do you have a balanced diet? And that's almost that box ticked. Yet, as you and I know, nutrition is one of the biggest factors to support women's hormonal health. And so how do you feel about the fact that it's kind of so minimized? It's just like a quick tick box question and that's it.
Yeah, I think it's a real shame, and I feel sorry for both parties, to be honest, because I do think, you know, GPs genuinely want to help.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not their speciality. They're obviously under a lot of time pressure in terms of the NHS doctors. You know, you've got this 5 or 10 minute appointment where you can talk about one condition, you know, and so already you're thinking, oh my God, well, I can't say this and this, 'cause I'm only allowed to talk about one thing. So you're going in with this kind of focused mindset. But of course, everything is so interconnected.
Yeah.
And I think for the ladies to be able to have a longer appointment and to be able to actually, you know, physically, you know, tell them everything what's going on for them, a GP can be much more support. And, you know, and in terms of GP training, I think a lot of GPs will say themselves, you know, they don't get a lot of nutritional training. So actually, what advice are they able to give them apart from general advice? And so I think really at that point, it's almost, you do need to seek that more specialist advice in, there can be a few tweaks, because it can be just simple things like balancing blood sugar,
Yeah.
and it's not always about eliminating things and not always about adding them in. It's about just maybe doing some simple swaps, which can be, magnified. And as an example, if somebody's drinking, say like fizzy pop, Coca-Cola, let's say, for example, 1 or 2 cans a day, and actually we just get that person just to change that one thing within a week, 2 weeks. Let's start with one habit at a time. It's manageable for somebody. And we start getting them to change that for water or coconut water, which can be very nice and hydrating. You've not taken really anything. You're not saying, look, please stop doing this. You say, look, let's swap it. Let's swap this and let's see how you feel. So you don't feel like you're missing anything. And so you're taking something that's negatively affecting the body and you're putting something that's really positive. And even just doing something like that, very simple, you're getting that dual effect. And so really you do, as a lady, I think, of course, there's places for the GP, of course, but then if you want those lifestyle and nutritional changes, I would be going to, somebody that's specialising in that.
In nutrition. No, absolutely. I want to take it back a little bit, because obviously we could talk all day long, and I'm sure we will talk a little bit more about, women in their 30s and 40s and 50s. But I just want to move it back a little bit, and I want to talk about teenage years and just, almost the start of hormonal shift. So maybe from 9 years onwards, which is, I got my period when I was 9, and so I'm expecting my daughter to maybe be the same. How do nutritional needs change from the younger years and teenage years through to midlife and menopause?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Leigh, because, sometimes when we, start out on our journey, we're not really thinking maybe about what we eat too much, because, kids and teenagers, largely influenced obviously by what's available in the home, but what they're seeing, and then of course what the friends are doing, eating and everything like that. But I think, when we are younger, and you just said, you started your periods there at 9, I was 11, one of my friends was 13. So I think, again, you've got these different even, growth spurts within even sort of like that period there. We are building the body, and I know that sounds really obvious to say, but when we're building the body, it's high energy need. We've got to get them blood stores up, and of course starting periods we're losing the blood, so we've got to keep that that blood really healthy to get the oxygen around the body. So blood, obviously we're building the blood stores, we're building a brain, and we're building the bones, and of course along with everything else we're trying to mature the immune system. And so we've got high energy, high nutrient need. And so when we're really looking kind of at, I suppose, like those key things, we're thinking about vitamin D, as we know, for that, the strong bones. And that's super important to build the bone at this stage, because, that's actually going to affect us later on in life. And of course, we're not thinking like that when we're younger, are we? We're not thinking about anything because we feel invincible.
Yeah.
But, reaching what we would call this peak bone mass and really stacking healthy bones, with that vitamin D, the magnesium, we then are a bit more protected when we get to later on in life. And so we've got to really think about these things. Omega-3, we're trying to build a brain, and a healthy brain that's under high demand, so you're studying and things like this. So we've got real key dense nutrient needs at that stage. And of course, we're moving 20s, 30s, we're in if I were fertile period, almost like that peak hormone, if you like, period. But again, just even if we don't want to have children, we've still got almost that peak activity going on. Usually we're feeling quite good, certainly 20s, going into 30s. 30s can be a changing point for a lot of ladies. Life stresses come in. We can feel it. Maybe then again, maybe we don't start sleeping as well. Maybe financial pressures, young children, things like this that can affect us. We're still trying to work full time and just do everything and run the house. And so then we might have higher needs for things that will help us manage maybe stress a little bit more, and energy, like high vitamin C. Maybe we need that higher dose of, magnesium, or we're taking that in via food. And then certainly when we get to menopause, this perimenopausal, we get that fluctuation, obviously, a bit more erratic hormonal cycle. And then moving into menopause, we do then, again, it's almost coming back again full circle to that omega-3, to support the brain, to support the heart, vitamin D remaining crucial throughout, and again for the bone health. And so all of our essentials, vitamins and minerals, foundation. But again, we do have peaks and troughs to where we'll need them at life, depending on, obviously where we are in terms of our hormonal transition. And of course, those big life phases, we're building a body, we're maintaining it, are we trying to sort of like now, if you like, feed that high demand for nutrients.
And so as a mother, for example, for me, or for any woman listening, how do you approach teaching healthy eating to younger women to make sure that they're making the correct decisions and forming the right habits?
It's very, very difficult, Leah. is what I can say. And I think it's a challenge because kids, let's face it, they don't want to listen. You talk more than 30 seconds and tell them something, they're bored already and they've switched off.
Yeah.
And so, it's a massively different way to communicate, I think, with the kids, with teens, because they've got such a short attention span, which is now even shorter due to social media. But so I don't try and lecture at all. I think it's good. Well, there's a few things. I think it's good when they can overhear your conversations that you're having with somebody else.
Yeah.
About nutrition, about healthy lifestyle and eating, because you're not telling them, so they don't feel like they're being lectured, but they are kind of wanting to hear in adult conversations, see what you're talking about, and they will pick things up. And it's surprising what they pick up. The kids are like a sponge, aren't they? They learn very, very quickly, and so they will bank it, even though they don't want to admit that they've banked that, that golden nugget or that insight. But again, I think environment for me is a number one, because environment, if you're setting the right environment in the kitchen and you've got out the right foods in terms of visibility and you're doing it, so you're not just telling somebody, you're actually, walking the talk. It's not like, do as I say, not do as I do. You're very much doing, almost, what you want them to be doing. And I think it's that demonstration of behavior. So, for example, trying to, cook a healthy meal, and we can't do that all the time, let's be realistic, but, at least getting out, chopping the vegetables, letting them smell and see the spices and the colour and looking at things and all them sensory clues as well in terms of the kitchen, seeing what I would call one of the biggest fresh fare. So you've always got out a fresh bowl of fruit, visual clues, environment, super important. Then there's no lecturing, there's no telling, they're seeing, and they can actually see that you're doing what you're actually preaching.
I love that, the visual cues. I almost forget that. We forget that, don't we? I always grew up in a house that had a fruit bowl there, but now I'm very guilty of always having my fruit in the fridge or, pre-chopped up. And so I store it in the fridge because it's just easy to grab. But you're right, it is really nice to have, not just that it's nice, it's actually very important to have things out and on show, isn't it? So they see them.
Exactly, because I think it's very subconscious. In any environment that you're going into, you're just getting visual clues and taking them in all the time. And, when you're seeing kind of that fresh fruit there, it's almost, okay, all right, that's there. And then you've got, whether it's Mars bars or everything else that people have a stash of, it's kind of hidden away. And so that's out of sight. And so the first thing the brain is seeing is this healthy food, or maybe we've got, like a really nice jug of water there with, cucumber in, or maybe some herb steeped and things like that. So it's the visual clues, or that look appealing to a younger eye. The colour always looks appealing to a younger eye.
Yeah.
Or if you've made your own oat bars, or you've got something to that degree in, is having those out chopped, so that when they're coming from school, and they are hungry when they're coming from school, aren't they? They're going to almost, oh God, thanks, Mum. There's a bit of oat bar. I'll just grab that until I, do X, Y, and Z. And so it's the visual clues rather than rummaging in the cupboard and looking for sort of like something that might not be as healthy as we want them to be getting hold of.
No, and I think anybody listening to this who has young children, they'll understand that the word snack is a complete trigger, isn't it? If we hear, as mums, if we hear the word snack one more time, like, honestly, I just cannot deal with it. So you're right, having something there for those moments is actually useful for everybody, especially even for mums that are maybe perimenopausal, just to kind of, calm your nerves of when they're constantly asking for food. It can be really triggering. What are the biggest myths that you see affecting younger people, and especially girls, around food and around their bodies and body image and hormones? This episode is sponsored by Revive Active, the multi-award-winning supplement brand that's enjoyed by customers every 1.3 seconds. Why the popularity and what's the difference with all of those other supplements out there? It's simple. Revive Active uses only the very best science-backed ingredients in their formulas, with no added nasties, while ensuring that the synergy of ingredients increases their effectiveness, giving you power, purity, and positivity in every product. Choose from truly comprehensive and great tasting powders or their range of clever capsules to support you, whatever the stage of life you're at. You can find Revive Active in Boots, Holland & Barrett, pharmacies and health stores, or online at reviveactive.com.
Yeah, and I think this is really, really crucial, because I think we've got the social media driving, something that can, for a lot of teenagers, put too much pressure to look or present themselves a certain way, and that can lead to, many problems, and disordered, almost like a bit of disordered eating, or perceiving what they should be eating, what they shouldn't be eating. And I think the most common thing is that you actually need to eat less if you want to be slim and healthy. And that's not true. You can actually eat more of the good stuff, and fill yourself up to be healthy and vital. And it's almost, rather than aiming on being, slim, or what you perceive from Instagram or whatever is flooding your feed of this perfect, this perfect skin, this perfect look, is everybody's got a different body shape, naturally. Is embrace it. And it's about being fit and strong.
Yeah.
And if you're fit and you're strong, you feel vital in yourself, you're able to perform at your best, whether that's at school or you're doing your sports at school. You're in the netball team, for example, and it's that fit and strong that is really going to carry you well, in terms of your inner confidence as well, I think. Because, if we're always trying to, emulate somebody else, it might not be, achievable for us. I'd love Claudia Schiffer's legs.
When
Am
we
I
all...
going to get them? No, exactly. No. So I've got to come to terms with that fact. But what does that mean for me in terms of, well, strong? I can be strong and I can be fit. And so I think we've got to take things that we see, and what does it mean for us? And there's no normal. You said you started your periods at 9. I started at 11. My friend started at 13. And just embrace the fact that we all develop at different rates. Because we can feel under pressure, if our friend, maybe she's developed a little bit more, and we think, oh my God, when am I going to start developing? We all develop at different rates. So again, it is hard as a teenager, because we are much more influenced by what's around us and our friends. But I think it's it's a moment in time. Embrace yourself. We all develop at different rates and in different ways. And I think the key thing is to be fit and strong. And if you do that, that's going to carry you really well throughout life.
I think the teenage years are particularly a worry, aren't they? Because, we see these huge shifts around puberty, and then of course we see them again around perimenopause. And so we see body size, shapes changing, women develop breasts, also, hips might widen, different things happening, or starting to collect, areas of fat in different areas. So that's puberty and perimenopause. But at perimenopause, at least you kind of have, a build up of education throughout the years, and you're already kind of, when you went through puberty, you're so young and you really don't understand what's going on and how to advocate for yourself. So you can be so susceptible to developing, a really bad relationship with food. One of the things you said though that really hit me was, when I asked you what is one of the biggest myths, and you said eating less is going to make you skinnier, and that's not necessarily true. That's huge for me, because I watch my daughter and my son as well, both my children, eat the most amount of food you have ever seen in your life, like way more than I would eat. They're really both good eaters. It's great. And they eat so much food. And I think, I could never eat that amount of food. So they're eating way more than me, yet the two of them are, obviously young children, but they're tiny. So it's exactly what you've said.
Yeah, yeah, because you're obviously, because at that stage, of course, you're building the body. You've got these huge growth spurts. You've got this high energy demand, and of course, yes, when you're eating like this whole food, you're getting your protein, your veggies, your fruits, your healthy fats. You can pretty much eat a lot of that food, and your body's going to be really healthy and strong, and it's going to know exactly how to process that food and use it. That's the key difference to eating the ultra processed foods, because they're not natural foods that the body, okay, so it's got to think about, how can I get rid of this, and what can I do with it, and it's very energy dense in a different way. So I think it is all about trying to pack in this whole food, and they can eat basically as much as they want, and you do feel much more full as well quite quickly, because when you're eating that fibrous food, you're eating protein, it fills you up and you do feel fueled. When you've got a high energy burn rate, and that high cell turnover as we're growing up and as teenagers, with that higher demand, you can do that. But equally, I think you mentioned perimenopause and menopause there, Leah. When we still eat this whole food diet there, and if we can maintain that, it's not easy, and I know this because obviously I've admitted myself how unhealthy I was. But the more we can maintain even just that base throughout life, it really does help us as we go into that perimenopausal and menopausal period.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of women as well, will complain about weight gain, can be one of the biggest things. But I think, again, your shape changes. You just mentioned it. Your shape changes again, sometimes during that time, which can be, again, hard for women. So we've got these two, like you say, almost the beginning here, and then this other transitional big period here, where we're seeing these huge changes in shape as well.
I think that's actually not spoken about enough, normalizing shape change of women, because even if you think of pregnancy and our body shape completely changes again, yet we're forever seeing the media kind of showing before and after pictures, or it's just such a pushed thing, isn't it? Somebody in their bikini body, and then now they've been taking GLP-1s and a picture of them now, or and it's this constant negative focus on shape change, where it's the complete natural cycle of a woman's life to change shape constantly, right?
100%. We're supposed to change. We are. You're completely right. We're supposed to change. Yeah. And you just said there, about developing boobs as a female teenager, and hips widening, of course, because we're getting ready. That should we want to become pregnant, further down the line, that is the body's natural shape. And like you say, pregnancy, of course, we're growing, so that we've got this wonderful baby growing inside of us, and I'm sure many women will say post-pregnancy, our body's not the same as pre-pregnancy.
Yeah.
But we need to just embrace these stages. And I think when we get to perimenopause and menopause, we might start to see that fat, where we lay the fat, it's laying in different areas, where the women then start to feel frustrated. But actually, ladies, I think just let's take it as an opportunity to go out and just do a little bit of clothes shopping, and then just see where we are now. What do we feel good in? What suits our shape now? And embrace that change.
Embrace the change, that's right. And not to forget the cyclical change. So even throughout the month, our bodies change shape. I might wear a pair of jeans one week, and the next week, if it's the week leading up to my period, or if I got my period, those jeans might not fit me.
Exactly. You're completely right there. And that might be the time for comfy joggers, because we do tend to get that bit more fluid retention as well. And maybe we don't digest our food as well, so we feel like a little bit more, bloated or heavy, and we don't want clingy stuff on. So completely, you're right to bring it even right down into that monthly cycle, transitioning what we feel good in at what particular time.
Yeah, it's just so natural for us to constantly be changing shape. And so I hate that women just shame themselves for it and just have so much guilt with it. For women in their 20s and 30s, and just women of every age, I suppose, but thinking about building habits for younger women, what, or anybody that's slightly older and needs to rebuild new habits, what habits can support long-term hormonal health?
Yeah, I think there's a few habits, and I think try and crack one before moving on to the other. And I'm sure that this sounds very, very boring because it's very basic, but water, the importance of water, just cannot be underestimated. if we are well hydrated, we can think quicker, we can utilize the nutrients we're taking into the body quicker, and we can expel the waste more quickly, more efficiently. So I think it's just thinking in terms of water fluidity within the body.
Mm-hmm.
And, just if you're not drinking enough water, or you're just conscious of that, or maybe we're drinking a lot of coffee and tea, so then actually we need to be thinking about how we're drinking enough water to actually combat that as well. Is just whatever mechanism it is for you, whether it's an app on the phone, whether it's an actual, I've printed things out before for clients, as in like little glasses of water on a track, and got them to tick every time they've had one, and they've got at least 8 glasses where they've got to get through in a day. And so that's building a habit, and again, it's another visual clue. And so I would crack that. And I think the second biggest one for me would be sleep, because sleep is fundamental to everything, and it's free. And so, but it's one of the hardest things for people to crack, because obviously, of course, sometimes we all work different shifts. Teenagers don't want to go to bed till late, so feel like they're missing out. But then obviously their cycle kind of goes out. When we've got demands of young children, maybe we are up through the night with young children. Maybe again, we're trying to work different shifts with a partner so that we can juggle family life as well. Or maybe we just sat on social media on the phone. And going through, which obviously can be very triggering, but also the light. But it really is crucial. And if we can get sleep right and get into a sleep habit, it will help balance the full endocrine system, the full hormonal system. And so that in itself can be literally life-changing for people. Literally life-changing. It's just trying to crack hydration in water and sleep. And so try and cement these big, because they are big ticket items. Sleep's free, water's relatively low cost. So I think, we've not got other challenges there in terms of that. It's just us physically doing it and applying it. And then, of course, then you're going to get into, nutrition. And so in nutrition, I would be saying, even if you can just change one meal, the way that you start off your day can often then take us on either a positive trajectory or one that we probably don't want to do a long time. And so if we can have a really, really good breakfast, maybe it's a quick omelette. If you're rushing, there's nothing quicker in terms of fast food than boiling 2 eggs. And so it's just thinking about what can we have that's going to sustain us for breakfast, rather than just almost grabbing something quite quick, a couple of slices of white toast and moving out the door. Because that's going to set us up for the day or not, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I always say to my kids, and if we're thinking about fast food, oh, that's quick or that's easy. Well, there's nothing faster than peeling a banana. Like, that's the fastest. Wash an apple. Like, it's literally the fastest food you could get. It's ready. Eat a strawberry. Just wash it. It's fine. It's crazy, isn't it? We think about fast food. Well, we have it. Fruits and vegetables are there. They're ready to go mostly.
Exactly. And we just forget the simplicity of that, Leah. And you've just even beaten my, couple of minutes boil an egg, peel a banana, take it out, grab a pear. Yeah, so it's just these things. And I think, again, if you tie up the visual clues, the fruit bowl and the fresh first, and sort of like, grabbing this quite quickly, and just getting into some of these key habits and nailing just one meal. You don't need to tackle everything at once. Just tackle one, and then the rest will start to follow. And so, you're nailing the hydration, starting to nail your sleep, or mostly, and then, you're just doing one meal. You feel like you're winning. And I think once you feel like you're winning, the other stuff then starts to become easy, because you want to do more of it, because you start to feel better and you've got more energy. And let's face it, we've got more energy, we feel like doing, a lot of other stuff. When we've got low energy, it's hard to even change one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It just has an impact on everything. And that's what we see as well with women, and a lot of perimenopausal women is it's just everything's a catch-22. One thing leads into another. So no sleep can lead into anxiety, low mood. One little thing can have such a knock-on effect and can lead on to the next symptom and the next symptom, which then leads back to not being able to sleep or poor nutrition. I wanted to bring you back to, you mentioned hydration. I'm seeing quite a lot now. There's something going around on social media. If you put salt under your tongue and drink a glass of water, that will hydrate you way more than just the glass of water on its own. When you hear things like this, I mean, firstly, is that true? And then secondly, when you hear things like this on social media or in general, how does it make you feel as somebody who's like a registered nutritional therapist?
I think that's a great example, Leah, there. And I think you've got to be careful about what's on social media or trends that, because once somebody starts talking about something, everybody then jumps on without knowing kind of, if you like, the science or the pathways and the mechanisms behind that. And so, and there's different forms of salt. And so if somebody's doing that with table salt, I would say absolutely not, because that's sodium chloride and there's a lot more chloride in there as well. And so you don't be raising your blood pressure. If you've got maybe a bit of kidney function decline, again, you've got to be really careful with these things here. And so for me, taking in a glass of water is very, very safe. And you're doing that consistently. You shouldn't need to resort to doing what's perceived as quick wins like that.
Yeah.
Now, there might be a place for things like, proper rock salt, sea salts, pink Himalayan salts and things like this, but you can use those in cooking, and people have been saying, about Celtic salt, maybe some of that, taking it with a glass of water. And it would depend, because everybody's individual. If you're an athlete that's sweating a lot, or maybe you are a perimenopausal, menopausal lady and you're maybe losing a lot of fluid because you are suffering, sweats and flushes and things like this, you've got to look at your overall fluid balance. So I think it's a case by case basis. And definitely I think that's a danger with social media, is because people see this one message and everybody tries doing it, and it's absolutely not good for everybody. So I'm not saying not for some people, but not for everybody, or we get, other messages. I think it was years ago about, bee pollen, and that starts a big hype off. And so you've got to be very careful about what you take in. And so I would just always dig a little bit deeper by what that person's telling you. Go off and do a little bit of research and then think, do I need that? What am I doing in my daily lifestyle? Do I need that nutrient? Do I need that salt? Do I need X, Y, and Z?
What would your advice be for someone, and I'm asking for a friend here, if normally you're quite well balanced in terms of your nutrition, but say you've just fallen off a cliff, say it's Mother's Day and you've eaten a whole box of chocolates, or it's Christmas and you've eaten a whole tin of whatever, or maybe you've been drinking alcohol, or you've been on holiday and you're eating and your routine's just gone out the window. What's a really quick 3-day or 1-day reset? Like, what is your go-to just to try and get your gut back on track?
Of course, and Leah, none of us are immune to having these, these blowouts and these days. And I think if you're going to do that, I think just embrace that moment, because if you've enjoyed it as part of Mother's Day celebrations, then that's been a celebration.
Yeah.
And I think we it's almost humanly impossible to do things 100% of the time, but we know that we do go off track every now and again. That's fine. We're human. Accept it, celebrate it, and enjoy that moment. And then don't beat yourself up. That's the worst thing. And that causes a downward spiral, And so when you wake up the next day, it's almost right. Really enjoyed that yesterday. Today's a new day. So let me just get back on track here. Right. So I'm going to have X, Y, and Z for breakfast. I'm going to start with my eggs, my omelette, my frittata, whatever that may be. And so just by starting off with that, have your jug of water ready, and, your lemon if you're going to chop that in as well. And you've got that ready for you. And I think one of the things that helps us snap straight back into something is getting ready the night before. So Mother's Day, for example, maybe we've been out, we've had a lovely meal, a couple of glasses of wine. So that night is get things ready for the next morning, so that when you wake up in the morning, you're not on the back foot. You're not thinking, all right, okay, I need to get back on track. You're thinking, right, there's my jug of water. I'll just grab that out of the fridge with my lemon in. That'll be lovely right now. Okay, there's my ingredients ready now to start making my omelette or my frittata, or maybe I've got my overnight oats, and so actually I can just grab them out of the fridge straight away. That snaps you straight back into getting back on. And then that's almost going to start you off then on your right blood sugar, steady on then throughout the day. And so being prepared the night before is easily going to help you snap back into getting on that healthy eating momentum again that you've carved out so well. And so the more you're prepared, and we have kind of like these blips, these celebrations, the easier it is to get straight back on track again.
I kind of love that, because it's like preparing your mindset, isn't it? And even though sometimes, like, I hate giving people advice or telling them, because as women, well, as everyone really, you feel like you're constantly being told, okay, and do this, and prep the night before, and also do this, and you must walk 10,000 steps and drink X amount of water, and blah. We constantly just feel like we're being told we have to do all these different things, but in actual fact, preparing, like, you're going to have to do that anyway at some point. And so you're just kind of hacking your mindset. So you're basically thinking of yourself tomorrow and saying, I'm going to make it a little bit easier for you tomorrow by leaving this out now, thinking it through. I think that would really work for me, actually, and I'm going to try that and let you know how I get on, Nicola. I want to go back to midlife and perimenopause, because of course that's the majority of our listeners, and it can bring just a whole host of new challenges, can't it? Which is really annoying. There's specific nutrients, and we get asked this a lot at the House of Hormones. This is probably number one question that we get. Are there specific nutrients or foods that you could recommend to support energy, mood, and the big one, sleep?
And so I think when we come to, if we just talk about foods first, and so tempeh, which is fermented soy, that can be lovely, and particularly if you're a vegan anyway or a vegetarian, you're probably eating already a lot of this, but this is lovely because it's that soy, so it's a really, really good source of protein. You know, you can kind of make it taste however you want to by whatever spice and things you want to add in. But because it's fermented as well, you've already kind of got that healthy bacteria as well, and then it's also breaking down that soy, so it's much more easy to take in and absorb. And then this tempeh as well has got something called isoflavones in naturally, and so these can have very, very, very weak estrogenic effects. So especially if we are like losing our estrogen at a quick rate, that, you know, this can be quite a nice food for some ladies, not all, but for some. Things like flaxseed, providing lovely source of fibre, very easy to get flaxseed in or ground flaxseed. You could just put a tablespoon onto your your oats or anything like that. You could even sprinkle it over a salad, the proper flax seeds, anything you want. This will really help, if you like, bind and eliminate sort of like, you know, that the toxins that we naturally create by obviously eating, and then we need to excrete our waste, and so they'll naturally bind to that as well and support the gut bacteria. And the healthier the gut bacteria is, the healthier we can then excrete those hormones that we've used, rather than being recycled again. Things like cruciferous vegetables as well, really, really important, and leafy greens, getting them in for perimenopause, menopausal women. Leafy greens, rich in magnesium. Magnesium, super supportive. You said about energy there, and mood. And so magnesium really supports both energy and nervous system. And so a huge benefit in terms of, you know, magnesium, it helps relax as well in some forms. And so when we're thinking about that sleep cycle, you know, or maybe we are kind of getting a bit more jittery, on edge, that can be a super useful nutrient as well. Of course, vitamin D, you know, helping that immune system as well, because as our hormones do fluctuate as well, can affect obviously the if you like, the ability of our immune system to work perhaps as well, or see things quite as well as it could do before. And so that's really helping as like an immune regulator as well, so obviously can keep as well. And so magnesium, I would say vitamin D. I'd also say omega-3, so oily fish, probably the favourite. You're getting protein in there, and you're getting the oily fish, the omega-3, which is really helping as well in terms of brain health and heart health as well. And so we've talked about foods, we've talked about some specific nutrients, I think, within that, and obviously these are just a few. But then I think I just also don't want to forget herbs and spices and what an effect they can have, you know, and how we can kind of get quite clever with those. And so sage, you know, there is, you know, some research behind sage as well to really show that it might help ladies that are trying to regulate their temperature. So we know obviously when we get too hot, us ladies can then suffer from kind of, you know, those uncomfortable sweats and sometimes night sweats, so then we're not sleeping as well. So things like maybe sage, just experiment with that in your cooking, you know, and really nice ways to get it in. And also things like saffron. So lots of research around saffron in terms of really trying to help ladies again, you know, feel a bit more elevated, because sometimes we can really dip sometimes within our mood. And so I'd just say, look at this array of rich herbs and spices that we've probably got within our toolkit, and how we can start to use them, to make our food taste better. But of course, just start obtaining a few of the benefits that they might offer.
I think people absolutely forget about herbs and spices and then turn to, even with saffron, I've seen so many people turn to supplements with saffron, and rather than just adding it to their food. But also, when you live in the UK and we talk about vitamin D, I mean, supplements can be a phenomenon for us, can't they, to help us get things into our diet?
Sure, Leah, because I always food first approach and these big lifestyle factors we've talked about. And it's almost like I would sometimes describe it as, building a house or these foundations. It might be a ladder system that you're picturing of, and all of these big things we've talked about, the sleep, the hydration, this, if you like, this healthy, balanced diet would be your big things. But then I would see, supplements as almost like sometimes the icing on the cake, because we might not be extracting everything we need from food. Our digestive system might not quite be working optimally. So can we extract the nutrients as well that we're getting actually from our foods? Are we hydrating enough to be able to get these nutrients around the actual body and deliver them to cells? Are we sleeping well enough, to kind of be then thinking right, eating right? If we are very, very stressed as well, we will burn through nutrients at a quicker rate. So we've got a higher need for them. If you think about nervous system, we've got this overfiring on the nervous system if we're feeling very anxious and stressed. And so actually, we can then have this need for this extra support. And that's the way that I would see it. So all of the foundations we're looking at, but then can we just deliver that little bit of extra support in terms of supplements? And so again, it's always in terms of supplements, is making sure that the right supplements for you at that phase of life, and that of course they are a good supplement in terms of delivering what you want them to. But I certainly feel that they do help, help ladies achieve what they want to achieve, and just almost give them that little bit of energy, or help them feel more settled in themselves and supported. If we can't eat as well as what we wanted to be, and particularly if we're stressed and we're not sleeping, we are going to have a higher need for some particular nutrients.
Yeah, I think as well, because we all have such a busy lifestyle these days, it's really difficult. I don't know many people that are sitting down to eat 3 meals a day. Like, I just don't know. People are kind of rushing, having their breakfast or having it in the office, and then maybe, yes, having a quick lunch at their desk, and then sitting down and eating a meal in the evening. I mean, that's most people that I know, when I'm thinking in terms of nutrition. And so to make people feel like they're achieving their nutritional goals, it can be really helpful. And I think a lot of supplements maybe get like negative press, when actually it can be a perfect way when added to a healthy diet as well. It can just be really helpful.
Yeah, I think you're completely right, Leah. And it's just like that other little support that you can weave into daily routine, that you feel you're doing something good for your body. Or for example, we've talked about magnesium quite a lot, that we, at least we've kind of got that little bit in. If I know that then I'm going to be going off, traveling, getting on an aeroplane, I'm going to be dehydrated, I'm highly unlikely to find healthy food in an airport, at a train station. And so you're starting to think, okay, then, yeah, I normally eat a healthy diet, but I'm very stressed. Maybe my mum's not so well. I've got high demands here. My teenager's going through exams. And so there's a lot of things where I'm burning through them, and I can't quite eat as well as what I'd like to be eating. And I think that is pretty, like you said, everybody's got busy lives.
Yeah.
That is more common, that we're feeling like that. And that we sometimes do unfortunately need to what I call grab and go, where you are faced with just trying to pick up the best that you can from a myriad of what, quite unhealthy choices. And so I think that when you've got this daily supplementation, at least you've got that baseline in there to support you.
Yeah.
And again, with supplements, there's different ones. You've got to see what are you trying to achieve. Why do you think you're depleted, and what do you think you're depleted in? How do you think this is going to help you? Because again, everything's very individual. But then by having this steadiness in, whether it's helping us something, maybe perhaps, take the edge off, maybe it's helping us relax a little bit more for sleep, maybe it's replete the energy. What are the most important things to me? What do I need? Do I need to take them at the beginning of the day? Am I taking the mid-afternoon to help me when I get that real slump? And so supplements, very individual. I think they can be very, very supportive, and you feel like you're supporting yourself when other times things might be a little bit out of your control, in terms of lifestyle factors.
Yeah. What are the big red flags that you see? Because you must see all the time red flags in diets that could maybe be affecting hormonal balance.
Again, a great question. I've talked a little bit about blood sugar, but I would talk about blood sugar again, and it would always be one of my fundamental principles to get balanced for somebody, because we'd always be asking, what do you eat? But not only what do you eat, when do you eat it as well? Because this is a key thing about timing. And so red flags for me is, if somebody, you can see they've not slept that well because they've filled out, the tracker for me. You can see they've not slept that well. So, of course, because we're on the back foot, the brain needs energy quite quickly. Then we're reaching for a quick carbohydrate breakfast, which is not uncommon for people. You'll see kind of a couple of slices of toast. You'll see a glass of fresh orange juice because people perceive that as healthy. And so straight away then we've not got really any protein in. So you see this big spike in blood sugar after not a great sleep. And so then because you get that drop in blood sugar because you've had this spike, you'll see people, of course, then mid-morning at work, they need a coffee to take them back up again. And maybe, it's a couple of biscuits. And this is normal. And so you'll see that kind of going up. And then for lunch again, grabbing a quick sandwich, with a packet of crisps in a meal deal because it's convenient. That's what's available when they've seen it. So you can see this. And then, of course, because then they're feeling fatigued by the end of the day because they've been on this roller coaster. And then by the end of the day, people, they just feel shattered. They're coming in and they want something satisfying and maybe sort of like comfort food, what we'd call. So maybe like it's then lasagna with a garlic bread. So you might see that then. And then it's almost like, but they've not been able to have that while 7 or 8 at night. And so then they're going to go to sleep on this very energy dense, food. And so they wake up sluggish. And so it's not just what you're eating, it's when you're eating it as well. And so they would be two potential flags for me. And again, we can all do this every now and again, but over time, that's not going to really serve you too well.
No, and also I'm thinking when you're saying that, so many people sit down after their dinner, say they have their dinner at 7 o'clock, so many people will then sit down and get the biscuits out, or even if you're watching Gogglebox and they always have all those lovely big bowls of snacks. I mean, they've got healthier over the years on Gogglebox, but you often see them with these big cakes and things like that. And so you think about people sitting down in the evening to relax after their dinner and then sitting having chocolate, and that's just before bed. I mean, I definitely used to do that, by the way. I don't anymore, but I definitely used to do that. And now to me, that feels crazy.
Yeah, I think that is huge because it's almost like, and I used to explain this to clients, it's like, just say you're working and your work day would finish at 5 o'clock, and then you've kind of, everything is nice and clear. And then at 5 to 5, your boss comes along, they dump a big bunch of papers on your desk and say, that needs doing before you leave. That's like dumping on our digestive system at a late hour when it's just trying to now start to rest, clean out for you. So then because when we've stopped eating, the digestive system can then kind of finish off all its processes. Then the body will start going into other processes. But if we're asking the body to digest food really late on a night, it can't start doing anything else until it's dealt with the food that it's currently got in its system. And so we're delaying, and that's why people can then feel sluggish the next day because we've not had chance to clear out, recollaborate overnight because we've had this big load of dense or not so healthy food. And that's quite an easy way for people then to remember.
Is there a certain amount of hours that you would recommend that you stop eat? Like say you went to bed at 10 p.m. What is an ideal time to kind of finish or have your dinner and finish eating?
I'd say probably about 3 to 4 hours, Leah, would be the, almost, if you like, perfect. And again, it depends how fast somebody's metabolism is, how active they've been. So there'd be a lot of depending factors. But I think if you can leave about 3 to 4 hours, so about 6 p.m., 7 p.m. maximum, And I think 6 p.m. is almost a great cutoff, especially if you're going to go to bed at 10. You have then got that period where your food can then be nicely digested before you go to bed. So then your body temperature can cool a bit, which obviously helps bring on that onset of sleep. And so you sleep better. Then in the morning, you've not had to deal with that big load overnight. Your body's been able to move through all its other body processes. And actually, you feel very, very different when you wake up. And of course, then you might start to feel a little bit hungry as you get into it and you get going. And then that's great. You know that kind of things are working as they should be and that you've done
Yeah.
almost that full cycle there.
Do you know what, Nicola? Sometimes I kind of think we knew all this. Like, this is just really natural and normal to the human body. When you think about our kids, we put our kids to bed at 7 o'clock and they don't eat breakfast until 7 o'clock the next day. And there's no problems there. But as adults, we learn these really bad habits, like, eating a bit later, going out and having dinner, and all that's fine. If you're on holiday or you're out on a night out, back to your point, when you're celebrating or it's the weekend and you go out for dinner, enjoy it for what it is on that day. But the rest of the time, to build habits where we sit down and then at 9 o'clock after our dinner, we'll sit and reach for the chocolates or the biscuits or our children, we put them to bed at 7 o'clock. Like, we know what's good. And then we kind of ignore it and build all these crazy habits anyway. Don't you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. And I think, sometimes we can be our own worst enemy, but we don't realise it because,
Yeah.
maybe we do feel like, oh God, I just need to relax now. Now the kids, yeah, we've got the kids to bed, like you said, at 7. Now we need some adult time. So then that maybe involves our dinner now with your partner. And, so now let's relax. And then let's have a chat. Should we have a glass of wine? Let's put this on. Let's put this program on. And then obviously then the snack starts well. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of obviously components to that because you feel like you're being sociable with your partner, if that's the case. You're catching up on your day, maybe you've got TV on in the background, but like you say, we're not doing ourselves any favors. And so I think it's just all it is, it's habit changes, but the habit changes can be the hardest to make in terms of what we're doing every day, because we're just not thinking about the long-term impact of that. We're just thinking, right now I want to talk to my partner, I want to have a couple of biscuits with a cup of tea, and actually then let's watch this program. That's how we're thinking. We're not thinking long-term. Actually, if I do this for 5 years, how is that going to impact me?
Exactly. And I think actually, because I'm going to ask you about tips in a second, but I think a big tip is unlearning rather than relearning new habits. Try and unlearn some of your current habits is maybe a really good starting point. I want to end on this. I know this is such a tricky question. It's like, because you've given us loads of tips, and I'm sure you could talk all day on different tips for women. But if every woman listening, whether from age teens through to menopausal or postmenopausal, could take away one single nutritional tip, what would it be? What would you tell them?
Yeah, you're right, Leah. There's so many, but if we did one, I would just say, look, if you're going to tackle anything or you want to look at anything, look at even your drinks first. Look at your drinks first. You can do so much by looking at your drinks first. We gave an example earlier on about swapping out. If you're drinking pop, not great. Really do try and change that for maybe coconut water, which would be a lovely, lovely swap there. If you're drinking lots of coffee, look at that, because that will be affecting, your blood sugar and sending your stress system up as well, which obviously has then a knock-on effect on your hormonal balance. So look at that, and not only look at that, of course, if you're having a coffee with friends, it can be very, very therapeutic and lovely. But if you're adding things to your coffee, like you're encouraged to, go large, add these syrup shots, really think about what you're doing there, because some of them can be extremely calorific, full, just literally full of sugar. And so just look at kind of what you're doing there as well. And this maybe is more the younger population, but if you're drinking energy drinks, really would try and just sit back and look at that. It's bright green because there's nothing in nature that is that bright green or bright blue or bright red. And so it might give you a very, very quick spike of energy, but it's going to give you a very, very quick crash as well. And these have got, chemicals and other factors in that you're not necessarily going to want in your body to promote your health and vitality. So I think if you just look at one component first, look at your drinks, you can really analyse that, track yourself over the week, what you're doing, be honest with yourself, because otherwise we're only lying to ourselves, and track that, and then think, okay, that is a bit ridiculous. I didn't realise I was drinking so much of that. I didn't realise I was adding these shots in, and actually I could even save some money here because I didn't realise I was spending all of this. You know, we can change a lot of things just by looking at that one thing in terms of drinks.
I love this question. I'm going to end on this, but what time do you stop drinking tea or coffee or anything with caffeine? What time in the day do you stop?
So what I will only drink is green tea, water, and I've started drinking coffee again after a 26-year break off coffee. So, which bizarre.
What made you stop drinking?
Yeah, because when I was, it's interesting because when I was saying I kind of noticed that I was very unhealthy, everything, I was drinking a lot of tea and coffee, and I was getting headaches, and so I eliminated tea first. I've never drank tea since, black tea since, it doesn't bother me at all. Then I eliminated coffee, and all my headaches went. And so that was a massive wake-up call for me. And so 26 years later, I was actually at an event trade show, and somebody persuaded me to taste their coffee because it was healthy, it had this, that and the other, and I said, oh my God, I don't drink it. And they said, oh well, we'll just do your half and blah blah. So anyway, so that kind of got me back onto it. But I will only still drink if you like the organic, the ground, whether it's, you know, like Blue Mountain coffee or whatever it might be. And so, and again, I will only have like one, maximum two, but it's usually one a day, and I won't drink any caffeine after lunchtime. Green tea, I might have one in the afternoon. I think there's so many benefits to green tea, but again, it would never be late. I would never go past kind of 2-3 o'clock because I drink water, a lot of water as well. And if I'm going to have a tea on a night, it will be a herbal tea. And then that's what I would be looking for on a night, you know, like a nice relaxing herbal tea.
People, honestly, like, I'm from Belfast, and people just, they cannot get their head around this. Because you'll go into somebody's house in the evening and they'll say, do you want a cup of tea? Like at 7 p.m. in the evening, and they will just sit and drink tea. And I can't, honestly, I remember trying to explain this to my dad and trying to get him to not drink tea, and he just couldn't, regardless of sleep problems. People are just like, no, you need to have a cup of tea. They can't get their head around it. Thank you, Nicola. This has been absolutely lovely. I've loved having you on. I know you work closely with Revive Active, and what do you do for them? What do you do with them?
I'm the education and training manager, Leah, so I'll be responsible for training about our products to retailers and store teams, and that would be across UK and Ireland. So I'm over in Ireland quite a lot, across the UK, and also as well international. And so we have that, like, if you like, that external education, but then we also as well train our, you know, our in-store teams as well. And so not just on the products, but almost, you know, about the benefits of some nutrients and why we wouldn't want to put something into a formula, why we would. So we go much deeper than that. But that's the basis, if you like, of my role at Revive Active.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love that you guys really do take a food first approach to when it comes to supplementation as well. And I just think that's so important. Thank you so much for coming on today. And hopefully maybe you'll join us again another time.
I'd love to, Leah. Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it.
If you enjoyed this episode today, don't forget to like and subscribe to the House of Hormones podcast. Your support really does help us reach more people and spread the word about women's health. Together, we can make a difference. We can't wait to see you in the next episode.